Before you hit record on your podcast, there's some questions that are worth asking. This is not to scare you away from starting because I do want you to start your podcast, but I want to save you time and set you up for success. So, in this episode, I'm going to be asking you 5 questions to ask yourself that will help you save time, energy, and help you create something that's sustainable. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. I was feeling inspired to record this episode because I've been helping amazing podcasters launch their podcasts since the beginning of the year, with my goal being 25 podcasts to help launch this year, but we're going to surpass that way before, which is so exciting. I love helping people become podcasters, and these are actually 5 questions that I ask my clients before we actually get started. So let's get right into it. My first question that I ask my clients is, what can you talk about for hours without getting bored? Now, sometimes people come to me with already ironed out plans, but sometimes there's clients that come to me and they don't know exactly what they want to talk about. They have a lot of different interests and they're just trying to figure out what is worth their time talking about, what's going to make a good podcast. So this is where I ask them, what can you talk about for hours without getting bored? Because if you're genuinely interested in a topic, your listeners will feel it. And this gets beyond the point of what's trendy, because we don't want to just talk about what's trendy. We want to talk about what you want to talk about, because authenticity is everything in the world of podcasting. So write that down and really think about it, because this is important. Don't think about what you think people will want to hear. Write down what you want to talk about. The second question I want you to ask yourself is, what energy do you have to give when it comes to podcasting? Because this is the difference between starting a podcast and sustaining a podcast. Starting a podcast takes one energy, excitement, creativity, just the desire to do it. And sustaining a podcast takes another. So consistency, discipline, systems. It's something that if you set up a weekly structure, there's going to be weeks you don't want to do it. So what is going to get you past that? And this is really where, if you have a business, you can root the podcast in your business so it's part of your marketing strategy. So the podcast fuels the content that you're posting on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts. Like, that will make it more sustainable. So think about it like that. Make sure that you have the time and the energy, because everyone thinks about launching a podcast, but they don't think about episode 20, episode 50, episode 100. I have clients that have 200 plus episodes. So think about those when you're thinking about launching. Honestly, though, don't let this get you stuck, because if you're not ready for a weekly commitment, I also have clients that do bi-weekly commitments or monthly commitments. I also have clients that do a daily podcast, right? Like, think about what's actually sustainable, because there's no right answer in podcasting, right? Most podcasters have a weekly show, but that doesn't mean it's the only way to podcast. Sustainability and consistency is way better than the start and stop method that many podcasters do. So ask yourself, really, what energy do you have to give when it comes to sustaining a podcast? I think you could do weekly, but it might take some support. So if you're trying to do it all yourself, be realistic here. Question number 3. How much research and prep do you actually want your topics to require? This is a huge one because in my episode tomorrow with Brian Callanan, we talk about how his podcast actually takes a lot of research because it's a news podcast. There's a lot that goes into it. Whereas on the other hand, my podcast, truly, I don't have to prep a lot for the conversations because this is what I do in my business. So it's easy to come up with solo topics. And also, I can be a good interviewer without doing a ton of research. I do have my guests fill out a prep form. I review that, I look at their socials and just see generally what they're up to. And then I go into the episode with curiosity. If I had to prep every single week for a in-depth conversation, I would not be able to do that. I truly could not. Sometimes my clients love doing in-depth research, but at the same time, some of them don't. And like I said, I'm not one of those people that want to prepare long, for a long episode. So think about that. What type of research and prep does your topic require? It just goes back into the time commitment thing. So think about this, like truly, who are you as a person? Do you like those deep, in-depth conversations, like deep dive topics, or are you okay with just casual conversations that can still be deep, but not so much stats and all that go into it? Question number 4 is, does my podcast carry responsibility to my audience? We all have a responsibility to our audience, but are you sharing information that people will make a decision on? So news, health, finance, parenting, legal topics, because these require a different sort of accuracy than an education podcast is for an online course or for a podcast on podcast like I have, or something more subjective and creative. It has a different type of responsibility. Okay, it all has a responsibility. I'm just saying that it's a little bit different. So what happens when you get something wrong? And back to the time piece, which I think is the most important thing, is will you have someone fact check? Will you do the research yourself? How are you going to present information to your audience? This is so crucial and so interesting that I think it's worth journaling on, because what type of responsibility does my podcast carry? That way, every time you prep for an episode, you can go and see, is this deep dive? What is this? And my 5th and final question is, and this one's kind of funny, but I think it's so important, is what does good enough look like for you? Perfectionism kills more podcasts than anything else. You don't need a studio setup with the perfect mic, with the perfect lights, with the perfect camera. You don't need that. But you do need good audio, good camera quality, good topics, good plan for the podcast. And if it's a business podcast, you need good funnels in place to make sure that the podcast is worth your time if you want a business ROI from it. So, what does that good enough look like for you? In terms of repurposing the podcast too, what does good enough look like when it comes to the content that you're creating? What does it look like when it comes to the graphics you're sharing, your website? Because I don't want you to start a podcast. Well, the truth is, if you try to make everything perfect, you're not going to start. But I don't want you to have all these pieces in place, trailer recorded, intro recorded, outro recorded, episode planned for episode 1 through 10, and the thing that you're held up on is your podcast background, or the thing that you're held up on is your podcast logo, or your music, or one of these pieces that doesn't really matter. So what does good enough look like to you? Can you do just good enough to get it across the finish line? What is the minimum viable version that still feels authentic and valuable to you, that you feel good about putting out? This is all about knowing your standards without letting them stop you. I think these are really good 5 questions to think about before starting a podcast. These are not meant to stop you. They're meant to prepare you, because when you get into the podcast world, it happens fast, okay? Weeks and weeks and weeks start adding up. So knowing yourself and knowing what your goal is will get you to past episode 50, past episode 100. In the next episode, like I said, you're going to hear from Brian. He's been podcasting for 7 years now, and he has been asking himself these sort of questions since the very start. So I'm excited for you to tune in tomorrow. But if these questions helped you, send me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to hear what you're working on. I'd love to hear your answers to these. And if you need any help or support with launching or scaling your podcast, do not hesitate to reach out. Make sure that you are subscribed to Podcast Cafe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, please leave me a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It means more than you would ever know. I'll catch you tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind the scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.